We've been waiting for the next models in Panasonic's Micro Four Thirds lineup for what feels like a lifetime now. But today, the wait is finally over. Well, sort of anyway. I mean, Panasonic have given us the GH5 Mark II, which is available now, and I actually have it right here. It's a slight spec bump version of the GH5, which we all know and love. But they've also teased the arrival of the one that we're really all waiting for, the GH6. Now, we don't know much, but we know it's coming in 2021, and we know it will be priced slightly higher probably than the GH5 has been. But we do know a few key specs. So let's get to those straight away before we take a look at what's new in the GH5 Mark II. So we know that the GH6 will have a new sensor and a new engine, which is hardly a surprise, but it's certainly a good thing to hear, as it means it definitely won't be an incremental upgrade. This should hopefully be a big leap forward for the GH series in terms of sensor technology and processing power. But what can you do with that increased processing power? Well, they've announced 5.7K 60p recording in 10-bit, which will likely be the highest resolution video capture mode in the camera. So this means that the GH6 will have a slightly higher sensor resolution probably than the GH5, and it will mean the GH6 will closer match Panasonic's full frame cameras like the S1H in terms of resolution. It's interesting to see that they aren't really joining the resolution race though. So yes, 5.7K is higher than the 4K in the GH5 right now, but it's not 8K like Canon and Sony have with the 8.1 or the R5, and it's not 12K like Blackmagic's Ursa Mini Pro. I mean, 5.7K could be a nice sweet spot for a Micro Four Thirds camera like the GH6. You get some downsampling for great 4K delivery, but you don't cram too many pixels onto that smaller sensor. Beyond that 5.7K mode, we're going to get DCI 4K recording at 10-bit 422 up to 60p with no record limits. Then in variable frame rate mode, you can go up to 4K 120p, but they don't specify if this is 8-bit or 10-bit, cropped or not, or whether it has a record limit. But either way, the GH6 will be able to match that 4K high frame rates of the A7S Mark III, the R5, and cinema cameras like the FX6 or the C70. And that's great to see, as those 4K high frame rate modes on those cameras have been very popular. But that's all we really know. There's no information here on codecs or RAW recording, no information on ergonomic changes, and no information on autofocus changes. I've been really hoping that the GH6 is the camera where Panasonic introduce an autofocus system to rival Canon and Sony, and that absolutely might still be the case. But a large part of me thinks that they probably would have teased it here if that were happening. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But while I am mentioning autofocus, I think it's worth pointing out that their new system, which we've seen come across their full-frame lineup now from the S5 where it was first introduced, is quite processor intensive in the way that it works. And so with a smaller sensor and a new processing pipeline behind that sensor, we could actually see a bigger improvement than we might expect on these Micro Four Thirds cameras, despite it being the same system. And that brings me on to the GH5 Mark II, which does have this new autofocus system which we've seen roll out across their full-frame cameras. And this is the first time we've seen it in a Micro Four Thirds body. But that's not all it has. It has a new processor inside, which has meant that they can incrementally upgrade pretty much every aspect of the GH5. We now have 6.5 stops of video sensor stabilization, the autofocus system from the S5, like I've already mentioned, DCI 4K recording options in more frame rates than just 24p, plus you can now record the 4K 60p internally in 10-bit rather than having to do it externally. And if you are recording it externally, you can record it internally at the same time as well. There's a slightly higher resolution LCD, charging over the USB-C port, slightly faster SD card slots, lots of small tweaks like that. But perhaps the biggest addition is the live streaming functionality. The GH5 Mark II can live stream in many different ways, in many different formats. The main way when you're out and about is by using their smartphone app to wirelessly connect to your phone and then stream up to the internet that way. Great for impromptu live streams wherever you may be. But that's not the only way you can do it. You can put your streaming settings onto an SD card and load them into the camera and connect then directly to whatever Wi-Fi signal you might be near and stream directly from the camera. No PC or phone needed. And that looks like quite a neat solution. Plus you can just simply connect it to your laptop over USB and then your laptop is going to see it as a webcam, which will be by far the most simple way to go live. And this is actually quite a comprehensive package of live streaming functionality. Overall, I think it's easy to be slightly underwhelmed by the GH5 Mark II at first glance, and I think just simply because it feels so similar to the original GH5. But these small changes do add up. We're going to be taking a much more detailed look at the camera after we've spent a bit of time with it. But it could just be that the GH5 Mark II is actually a very sensible and practical camera, just like the GH5 has been, but updated to keep up slightly better in today's landscape of cameras. And of course, that next big leap for Panasonic's GH line, the GH6, is just around the corner. So, what do you think about today's announcement? What are you hoping for the GH6, and do you agree that the GH5 Mark II could be a more sensible choice than it would appear at first glance? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you want to pre-order either camera, then of course just head over to proav.co.uk. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.